Welcome to Storysphere, where every story brings a new adventure. Whether it's a classic tale, a thrilling journey, or a heartfelt moment, we are here to spark your imagination. Let's get started. The phone rang at precisely midnight. Detective Evelyn Hayes glanced at the screen, her stomach twisting with unease. She hadn't expected anyone to call this late, especially not with the case she was working on. Reluctantly, she answered. Hayes. A chill swept over her as she heard nothing but silence on the other end of the line. She frowned, glancing around the dimly lit room of her small apartment. It was quiet, too quiet, and the stillness seemed to press in on her. Hello? She asked again, her voice sharper now. Who is this? Finally, a voice, low and distorted, spoke through the receiver. You are getting too close, detective. Evelyn's blood ran cold. This wasn't a random prank, she could feel it in her bones. There was something about the voice, calm, measured, but with an undercurrent of threat, that sent a shiver down her spine. What do you want? Evelyn's grip tightened around the phone, her heart pounding. You'll find out soon enough, the voice replied. But first, I have a task for you. Evelyn's mind raced. She'd been chasing the elusive killer for weeks. 5 victims already, all found dead in their homes, no signs of forced entry, and no obvious connection between them. Each time, there was only one thing that linked the murders, a strange note left at the scene, with a cryptic message. What task? She asked, her voice steady despite the anxiety gnawing at her. Go to 210 Maple Street. You'll find your answer there. But be warned, time is running out. The line went dead before Evelyn could respond. She stared at the phone in her hand, her thoughts whirling. Maple Street was on the outskirts of town, an old, crumbling neighborhood that had long since been abandoned. Why would the killer send her there? What was waiting for her? She had to go. She had no choice. The killer was playing a game with her, and Evelyn wasn't about to lose. By the time Evelyn arrived at 210 Maple Street, the moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale light over the dilapidated house. The street was empty, eerily quiet, and the houses around it seemed to be sinking into the earth. The neighborhood had been neglected for years, vacant homes with boarded-up windows, broken fences, and overgrown yards. No one had lived here in decades. Her headlights illuminated the front porch of the house, where an old rocking chair swayed gently in the breeze. Evelyn could feel the hairs on the back of her neck stand up as she parked her car at the curb. Every instinct in her screamed to turn back, but she couldn't. Not now. She had come too far. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching under her boots as she made her way up the cracked walkway. The door was slightly ajar, as if waiting for her to enter. She hesitated for a moment, hand hovering over her gun, before pushing the door open and stepping inside. The house was dark, the air stale and heavy. Dust danced in the faint beam of her flashlight as she moved cautiously through the foyer. She could hear nothing but the sound of her own breath, the silence deafening. The hallway stretched before her, lined with peeling wallpaper and broken picture frames. A staircase loomed at the end, leading to the second floor, where the shadows seemed to press closer. Evelyn's instincts were screaming now. The hairs on her neck were prickling, her senses on high alert. Something was wrong. The house felt alive, as if it were watching her. Who's there? She called out, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. No answer came. She continued forward, the flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, until she reached a door at the end of the hallway. It was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling out from the crack. Evelyn reached for the doorknob, her hand trembling slightly as she turned it and pushed the door open. Inside, the room was dimly lit, the source of the light coming from a single lamp on a desk in the corner. The walls were lined with old bookshelves, filled with dusty volumes. But it wasn't the books that caught her attention, it was the figure standing in the center of the room. A man, dressed in black, stood motionless in front of her, his back to her. His presence was imposing, as if he had been waiting for her all along. Who are you? Evelyn demanded, her voice firm despite the unease flooding her chest. What do you want? The man didn't move, didn't acknowledge her presence. Instead, a voice, low, familiar, and distorted, came from the darkness, like an echo in her mind. Time is almost up, detective. You've played the game well, but the end is near. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. It was the same voice from the phone. But now, it was closer, right here, in the room with her. Why are you doing this? Evelyn pressed, taking a cautious step forward. The man finally turned to face her. His features were hidden by the shadows, but the glint of his eyes was unmistakable, cold, calculating, and full of malice. You'll understand soon enough, he said, his voice flat. But first, I have a final task for you. Evelyn's breath hitched. This was it, the moment she'd been waiting for. She had to make it count. What do you want me to do? She asked, her pulse pounding in her ears. The man stepped aside, revealing a table in the center of the room. On it lay an old, yellowed envelope, sealed shut with wax. The symbol on the seal was the same one that had appeared in every note found at the crime scenes, the spiraling circle. Evelyn hesitated for a moment before approaching the table. The envelope was cold to the touch, as if it had been sitting there for years. She tore open the seal and unfolded the letter inside. As she read the words, her heart dropped into her stomach. You've been a worthy adversary, Detective Hayes. But the game is over. You have failed. Evelyn's eyes scanned the letter again, but there was no doubt in her mind now. The killer had been toying with her from the very beginning, using her own pursuit to lead her to this moment. She looked up, but the man was gone. The room was empty. Her breath quickened as she turned toward the door, only to find it closing on its own, the faint sound of footsteps echoing from the hallway outside. Evelyn ran for the door, but as she reached for the handle, something slammed into her from behind. She spun around, her heart racing as she found herself face to face with the figure again. This time, he was closer, too close. Before she could react, he lunged at her, his hand gripping her throat in a vice-like hold. She gasped for air, clawing at his hand as the room spun around her. Panic surged within her. She had to fight, had to survive. In a desperate move, Evelyn drew her gun and fired blindly. The shot echoed through the room, but the man didn't falter. He squeezed harder, and her vision began to blur. Just as darkness threatened to overtake her, a sudden noise, sharp, like breaking glass, pierced the air. The man recoiled, a look of surprise crossing his face as he stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder. Evelyn took the opportunity, her vision fading but her willpower refusing to break. She fired again, this time hitting her target. The man collapsed to the floor, blood pooling around him. Evelyn stumbled back, gasping for breath, as she struggled to remain conscious. With one final effort, she staggered to the door, her legs weak beneath her. She was almost out when she heard it, a sound that stopped her dead in her tracks. The phone, ringing once more. Detective. Came the voice, calm and cold, through the receiver. The game never ends. And this time, she didn't have the strength to answer. Thanks for tuning into Story Sphere. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more tales to inspire and entertain. Until next time, keep the stories alive.